Shalom, this is Rabbi Adam Law from Toronto Lights and Or Yisrael. This week I'd like to talk about Parshas Vayishlach. Vayishlach is a fascinating parsha which spans the continuing growth of the Jewish people through the patriarch Yaakov. In this week's parsha, Yaakov is blessed with the name Yisrael, and he indeed becomes this nation which the whole world was created for. We had spoken previously that in Bereshis Rabbah it says that the whole world was created because of a nation, that God wanted to have a relationship, that God did not want to be alone, and therefore He created a people in order to have a relationship with them, and that they would bring God's light and goodness into the world. That nation is called Yisrael. In last week's parsha, Vayetze, when Yaakov rests his head on the rock, the Kedushas Levi points out that this is referring to the rock of creation, the beginning point, the Even HaShasiyah, which is the central point and idea of all creation, of the Beis HaMikdash, the central point in which the Jewish people connect to Hashem at the highest level. This nation, Yaakov rested his head on it, meaning symbolically he brought this idea, the spiritual idea, that he would become this nation himself. He brought it into reality from the spiritual idea of the 7 things that were created before creation, as the Midrash points out, and brought it into reality within himself. As in these parshas, he made the tikkunim, the spiritual and emotional fixings necessary to become this person, the great leader, which would have 12 holy tribes. Before this, we see that Abraham had 2 children, Yitzhak and Yishmael, one of which went towards the side of good, and one which went not so good. And then we see Yitzhak had 2 sons, Yaakov and Esav. Now, as we pointed out previously, Yaakov and Esav, it's a little more complicated as to what was happening there. The Bnei Yissaschar points out that there was a prophecy that there would be 2 brothers, and they both would fulfill God's will as a partnership. Maybe sort of like a Yissaschar Yevulun type relationship, where one learned Torah and the other one fulfilled the blessings of the physical world. However, in Parshas Toldos, with the failing of Esav to fulfill the will of God, he fell very hard, and the blessings of the physical world, which he was supposed to be given, went to Yaakov instead, and Yaakov fulfilled both the blessings of the spiritual, of the sitting in the tents, as well as the physical blessings of being able to bring God's light into the physical world. The Tiva Shalom points out that this is actually the path of Chassidus, is that Chassidus points out that there's not only God's holiness to be found in learning Torah, of course it's there, but it's also to be found in bringing God into the world, into the business place, into midos, ethics, dealing with people. The Baal Shem Tov points out in Savas Rivash that you can actually get very, very close to God just by speaking to people in a godly manner. And that God's light can be found there also. So Yaakov took both blessings. However, at the beginning, both Yaakov and Esav, even though Yaakov's inclination was towards Torah and good, and Esav's was bad, nevertheless, Esav had incredible potential to be even greater himself than Yaakov, because he could have transformed his evil nature into good. If you hadn't heard what I'm saying before, there's a proof for this in Gemara Kedushin, page 18, where it says that Esav was a Yisrael Mumar. He was a rebellious Jew. Meaning as Esav could have been a Jew, he could have brought God's light into the world. However, he fell very badly, completely on the day of the death of Abraham, where he started murdering, raping, and pillaging, and it was all downhill from there, and then he lost the Bechorah and the Bracha. However, there is a spark which Esav could have been good. We know that Esav, from the prophet Avadia, will be wiped out in the world to come, as he is one with the Yetzer Hara, and the Yetzer Hara will be wiped out. However, Rabbi David Miller once put it out to me, there may be a side of Esav which is redeemed. There is some spark there. The worst part of Esav is called Amalek, which we see he passed on Esav a spiritual, if you call it spiritual, inheritance through his son Eliphaz to Amalek, which becomes embodiment of pure evil. So Esav, though, does have some spark of possibility of good. And similarly, Yaakov has the possibility of doing bad. The question is, in the surface, it may look, as the Rabbi Pesishka points out, that Esav on the surface may look like Yaakov, and Yaakov on the surface may look like Esav. We see that by Esav, was telling his father about tithing salt, grain, straw, etc., that Esav was trying in some way on the surface to look like he was good. And we also see that Yadayim Yadei Esav, that Yaakov sometimes needs to resort to the physical weapons of the world, of bloodshed and trickery, in order to achieve God's will in this world. So we see that both have aspects of both, and truth is, Yaakov, if he isn't careful, if he doesn't pass his test, could Has v'Shalom fall like Esav. And vice versa, we see Esav could have been even raised to a higher level than Yaakov. However, we know in the end it's not the case, that Yaakov fulfills all his tests, as followed through these parshas all the way through V'yichi. And Esav falls completely, as we see at the end of this parsha, where it says there was no king in Edom at a certain point, meaning is all the godliness, the spirituality that was found in Esav eventually is wiped out and disappears, except maybe some little bit, which we will, let's just say Tzarech Iyun needs more investigation as to what that is. However, here in our parshas Vayishlach, we're finding that Yaakov still has to fulfill his mission, his tikkun, in order to achieve this level of becoming the person that he could be. And inside of him, he knows he has gone through some trouble, some very questionable things have happened. From the beginning of the Bechorah, of taking the Bechorah, the firstborn, the firstborn, to taking the bracha, which may really belong to Esav, because we see that Yitzhak in the end does give a conciliatory bracha to Esav. And that maybe Esav really does have a point. Maybe Yaakov should have let Esav have that bracha, and they could have been the partnership. However, we know Rivka, who is a bigger prophetess, knew the truth that Esav would not be able to handle that bracha. Esav would have ended up being destroyed and made the world even a worse place if he had gotten it. And therefore Yaakov went with his mother, the prophetess Rivka, and followed her opinion that it was appropriate that Yaakov take both sides because Esav was not able to take it. However, Yaakov doesn't know this fully and spiritually yet because he doesn't have 12 children yet. We see there in Parshas Vayetze, when he rests his head on the rock, that there were 12 rocks and they turn into one rock, according to the Midrash. Well, Yaakov knows that until he has 12 children, he hasn't made his tikkun. Until he has 12 holy tribes, he is not there yet. And therefore, without Binyamin being in the world yet, he does not know if he has fulfilled the tikkun. Therefore, he still has doubts about whether he's doing the right thing or not. And therefore, that's when he enters the land. He has doubts here about whether Esav's going to defeat him. Because maybe the land really does belong to Esav. Maybe Esav is right. Maybe he should have taken the bracha of Shmanei Haaretz and Tal Shamayim. That maybe Esav deserved this, and Esav got the physical land of Eretz Yisrael, where Yaakov's portion of Torah is reserved for the world to come. So therefore he's in doubt, and therefore he has to pray to Hashem before this momentous encounter with Esav in this week's Parsha to see whether he is really at that level. And we see in Yaakov's humility, he doesn't believe he's at the level. He says, I have been reduced for all the good and truth you have done for me. Meaning is, I don't know whether I deserve it anymore. I don't know whether I have any zechios, any more merits in order to pass this test. Maybe I was wrong to take the bracha. We'll speak more about the bracha, because we'll see in the end, the bracha is specifically after Yaakov wrestles with the angel of Esav, what he asks for is a bracha. Meaning is, he asks for the confirmation that the brachas that he took from Esav were in fact belonging to him. And at that point, when he does get the bracha, that is the point where he actually fulfills his mission to become Yisrael. And that we see that even though it looked like some of his methods were not so straight to take the bracha, we see in the end that Yaakov really is in fact deserving of the bracha, and everything is going to be okay, despite that fact that he took the bracha, and that was what it's meant to be. So, I want to raise a few more questions, and then we're going to look at the parsha itself here of the momentous meeting of Yaakov and Esav. Another question we talk about, and I just want to get into a little bit, is about the idea of Yaakov and the goats. The Yaakov's part of himself, which is struggling with the symbolism of the goats, which we know symbolizes the other side. It symbolizes covering up, because the hair of Esav, the hair of goats, is the side of Gevura. It's the side of covering up Kedusha. The beard covers up the face. Why do we see that the first gifts that Yaakov sends to Esav are again goats? We already saw the goats. We saw the goats by the skins that Yaakov wears in order to become Esav. So what is the symbolism of the goats? And another question we have to ask is, what about Yaakov's methodology of approaching Esav? We see that oftentimes Yaakov has very different methodology of approaching the world. when Esav threatens him, despite the brachas Yaakov received, he runs away to leave the land, to go back to Ur Kasdim. He goes to Yeshivas Shem Ve'ever for 14 years, and then he goes to Ur Kasdim. So what is the deal with Yaakov's methodology? Especially with the great question is that we see when he gets to Ur Kasdim how strong Yaakov is, that he's able to lift that rock that many shepherds were not able to lift. He's able to lift the rock out of the way in order to water the flocks that are there. Clearly Yaakov is a man of Gevurah. So why doesn't he just fight Esav in the beginning, and why doesn't he just fight Esav here? And by Lavan, we see Yaakov uses a different method, a method of, let's say, wisdom in business dealings. That we've seen that Yaakov has the ability to use his wisdom to do things which look in the exterior like mirma, like deception, but really are wise. We answer this question in Parshas Toldos is why was Yaakov the Ish Tam able to use these deceptive methods when he is such a straight person? And the answer is because sometimes when you're fighting against a snake, you must use the skin of the snake, i.e. you must fight fire with fire. You have to sometimes dress yourself up in the clothes of the enemy, understand your enemy, and use his methods against him in order to fight him. And that's what it means, Yadai Midei Esav Akol Kol Yaakov, is that the main point is that Yaakov, even if he has to engage in deceptive methods, even if he has to engage in methods of bloodshed and war, the interior must always remain Yaakov. And he must always remain Yaakov. And we're going to see that in a minute, that Yaakov actually has some doubts about whether he is better than Esav, about whether the methods he has been reduced to using really are God's will, and whether he himself is really better than Esav. And that is why he has so much doubt when he approaches Esav about whether he's going to defeat Esav. Maybe Esav is right. Maybe Esav deserved the brachas. Maybe Yaakov's methods were deceptive and they weren't the Ish Tam, the way he was born. He was being raised and learned to act in a way which was not straight. But nevertheless, we see that Yaakov uses different methodologies. By Lavan, he doesn't use physical force, but say, okay, well, it's his father-in-law. Okay, fine, it's his father-in-law, but Esav's his brother. And we see that he does in this week's parsha possibly resort to physical force. And we're going to answer the question of why he asks the angel to bless him. So I want to look at the Pesukim here to get into it, to talk about this encounter. It says Yaakov sent angels before Esav, his brother, to the land of Seir, the field of Edom. Right? We see it's the field of Edom. We know the field is Esav's territory. We know that the Esav is the master of the field. He has built an army here. He's become a strong power in the land, and he lives in Eretz Yisrael. He said to them, "To my lord, to Esav, said your servant Yaakov, I have sojourned with Laban and have lingered until now. I have acquired ox and donkey, flock and servant, and maidservant, and I am sending to tell my lord to find favor in your eyes." The angels returned to Yaakov, saying, "We have come to your brother, to Esav. Moreover, he is heading towards you, and 400 men are with him." Here the commentators point out that why would, if Yaakov wants to get on Esav's good side, why would he be pointing out of the ox and donkey the good things that he received? Well, one opinion is that the ox and donkey are referring to his sons. The ox referring to Yosef, which is the power to defeat Esav. The donkey is referring to Yisachar, who is the strong-boned donkey, who has the power of Torah, meaning is I have Torah. And also we say here, Im Lavan Rasha Garti, but Taryag Mitzvah Shamarti, I fulfill the mitzvahs, meaning is one explanation is that Yaakov is saying is, hey, I'm ready to go, I'm strong, I have a lot, I can fight. But that explanation is, the question is why would he want to do that when he wants to appease Esav? Why would he want to get Esav jealous? And the answer that we see here, Rashi brings down, is that he actually is pointing out that the brachas of his father of the Tala Shemaim, the dew of the heavens, and Shmani Haaretz, the fat of the earth, he has not been received yet because he has not received land. He has not gotten the Tal of the heavens, which is the dew which raises up the crops well in the dewy season. And the fatness of the earth he has not gotten because he's not gotten land. So he's saying, brother, don't worry, the brachas have not been fulfilled in me. Don't worry, maybe you're going to be a king after all, and I'm not going to be the person that we thought I was going to be after I received the brachas. And again, this might also show, as I was saying, a little bit of doubt on Yaakov's part as to whether he really deserved the brachas, whether he did the right thing. Maybe he should have given Esav a chance, a little boost to get the brachas. He himself wasn't so sure whether he should take the brachas, but he followed, again, his mother Rivka's opinion. And here you can see he has some doubt whether the brachas were really deserved by him. So we see the messengers say to him, Esav's coming, 400 men are with him. Yaakov became very frightened, and it distressed him. So we see here the three methods that Yaakov uses, the methodology. Here he again, we know at all times of suffix, as we talked about with Avram, all times of testing, a person's in doubt. Here Yaakov is wondering, do I have any zechiot? Do I have the merit? All his levels, his spiritual levels of confidence and serving God have been stripped away from him. So therefore he's reduced to to having a lot of doubt about what his methodology with Esav is. Should he fight? That's milchama. Should he daven? That's the hitpalel. Or should he use a mincha to bribe him? You would think he would fight Esav with the blessing of war. He had been able to roll that rock off. You think he'd be able to take Esav out, or even using deception, which he had used against Esav and his parents in the past, as well as Lavan. But no, he's not sure here, because again, at the moment of test, we're not sure what's the methodology. We have to move forward. But here Yaakov, using this great intelligence, still does three things. He davens to Hashem. He prepares a mincha, meaning as a bribe, to Esav, and he also prepares for war by splitting the camps up into many camps. So here he davens to Hashem, and in his humility he says, he has been diminished by all the kindnesses and all the truth that you have done for your servant. Then he uses an extremely interesting point, which goes along with my thesis of Yaakov's doubt of whether he himself has been doing the right thing through his methodology of fooling Esav, of fooling Lavan. He says, rescue me now, please, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esav. Meaning is, Yaakov realizes he's not fixed yet. He's got a part inside of him which is still Esav, which is still this part of him which he does not know whether he's doing the right thing. Maybe he is going to become like Esav. Maybe if he fights Esav and ends up killing him, he will be no better than Esav. So we see that he is full of doubt. Rescue me from the hand of my brother. Meaning is, Esav's also a part of me. Just as Esav has a little bit of good and a lot of bad, Yaakov also has a Yetzer Hara, which is not completely fixed yet. And Yaakov's afraid that if he does the wrong thing here, he could lose everything. And now the risks are even greater because he's got a family, he's got wives, he's got children, he's got to be able to do the right thing by them. And now he's really, really, really at doubt. We oftentimes find with a man that when it comes to himself, maybe he's not so worried. But when he's got a family, the sense of responsibility of the loving care he has for the family brings much more sense of gravity of the situation. And here he's wondering, are my actions straight? Am I doing the right thing by God? Maybe my Yetzer Hara is going to flare up on me and I'm going to have to resort to some unethical method because I have so much doubt. Should I have taken the bracha? Should I not? Should I have fooled Lavan in the way that I fooled him? Should I not have? I don't know. That's also, by the way, why he has to make the bris with Lavan at the end. Again, to settle all affairs with Lavan and to walk away feeling like maybe he did the right thing. Because if not, he would always doubt whether he did right by Lavan and his family. So here, he spends the night there, and he starts sending out the tribute to Esav. We see, it sends the tribute, he sends many, many animals. And again, what does he send? He sends goats first. 220 she-goats, 200 she-goats and 20 male goats. Again, the system of twos. We see there were 2 goats involved when Yaakov fooled his father to take the blessings of Esav. And there are, again, systems of twos here, 220 goats. There's something about the goats that one side, that they come in doubles, one representing the power of Yaakov having to overcome his evil inclination and sometimes wear the skin of Esav, and the other side and that's towards the side of good, and the other side to appease Esav and that side itself. We see this mystical symbolism also by Yom Kippur with the 2 goats. One side towards the side of good, which is Yaakov, the side of Yaakov sending his goat to Hashem, and the other side to the side of Azazel, to the bad side. The Sfarim say by Yom Kippur, on the scapegoat that we send there, that on that day, all the Jews are davening before Hashem, and there's a little bit of hypocrisy there. So the Jews are afraid that maybe the Satan is going to stand up before Hashem and accuse us and say, look at these Jews, they're davening before Hashem. They're hypocrites, they're not tzaddikim, they're not so good, and therefore, as the Sfarim say, throw a dog a bone and you'll wag his tail. We give the Satan a goat on Yom Kippur to appease him. We give him an offering. We give him this offering to appease him. It's not a sacrifice, but it's just something to appease him. It's a gift to him in order to get him on our side. And he even turns around, according to Tanai Debei Eliyahu, and praises us on that day because of this. And this is the methodology that Yaakov uses here. He sends these goats, symbolizing his own touching with his own Yetzer Hara that maybe he's been involving in that side, and he's not sure at this point whether he did the right thing or not. And also the aspect of appeasing Esav himself. We see that's the symbolism of the goats. The Sfarim also said actually on Rosh Chodesh, the goat that we bring there as well is dealing with this. So I want to move on ahead here and talk about him being alone. So basically he sends the mincha offerings forward, and then at night Yaakov gets alone. I'm not going to get into exactly why he was alone. There's connections to Hanukkah about that, why Yaakov went back for his flask of oil, etc. I'm not going to get into that. It's not important for the purposes of this Devar Torah. But the point is that Yaakov is alone. He somehow gets separated on the other side of the ford from his family, and he wrestles with the angel. And it's very interesting here, again, this idea that we're not sure whether Yaakov is going to be reduced to becoming like Esav, or Esav was maybe really right and Yaakov shouldn't have done this. This is further proved by the fact is that when they're wrestling here, if you look there, it said the two are wrestling, one strikes the other one back and forth, and for almost the whole parsha of the wrestling between Yaakov and the angel, which we know is the Satan, is the angel of Esav, but it's also the Yetzer Hara that Yaakov has, the interior struggle that he's struggling with himself. We don't see any proper pronouns here. We don't know which one's which, meaning as Yaakov is struggling with himself. He doesn't know what's going to happen. Is he going to become a murderer like Esav? Is he going to end up killing Esav? Well, maybe Esav was right, and Esav should have gone the bracha, and Yaakov is going to kill him and take the land away from him, even though the land really belongs to Esav. He doesn't know. Or does the land really belong to him? Does the bracha really belong to him? And that's the symbolism here, that when you see here, it says Yaakov was left alone, and a man, being the angel Gabriel, or maybe it was also the angel of the Satan, of Esav, his own Yetzer Hara, was struggling until the break of dawn, meaning as this struggle will happen until the break of dawn, until the time of Mashiach coming, until when God's light is revealed in the world. He perceived he could not overcome him. He struck the ball of his thigh bone, and the ball of Yaakov's thigh bone became dislocated as he wrestled with him. Right? So we see that we don't see proper pronouns here. We don't know really what's happening, who's happening to who, meaning as the struggle could be interior. It's him and him. Eventually we do see that Yaakov emerges at the time of redemption, at the time when the sun comes up and the power of darkness of the Yetzer Hara is finally defeated. And then we finally see their names. He says, what is his name? First of all he says, I will not let you go until you have blessed me. What is your name? He says, my name is Jacob. So here we see the separation between the good and the bad. At the time of Mashiach, the evil side is going to be shechted. He's separated, and Yaakov is going to be go up towards the good. And he says, your name will no longer be Jacob, but Yisrael. For you have striven with the divine, and you have overcome. So here he gets the name Yisrael, meaning as the struggle the Jews have constantly to find God and have some constant doubt about whether they're doing the right thing all the time. This guilt, this conscience the Jews have that they brought into the world, this is going to be Yaakov's struggle throughout all time. And here when he gets the blessing of Yisrael, it means the struggles with God, meaning this is what Yisrael and Yaakov will always be struggling with, to bring out godliness even in the darkest, toughest times. But we see in the end that he will succeed. And we see in the end, what does Yaakov ask for to answer our question? He asks for the bracha. Because during the tests, the brachas were removed from him. As we pointed out, the Baal Shem Tov says at a time of a test, a person's brachas are always removed from him, a person's levels are always removed from him. But in the end, when Yaakov prevails at the turning of dawn, he sees he asks for the brachas back, meaning as he wants the confirmation that the brachas that he stole from Esav at the blessing of Yitzhak were the proper thing, and he indeed gets them, and this confirms, sort of like the bris with Lavan, that was the right method with Lavan, that he did the right thing, and that he spiritually overcomes his Yetzer Hara, and he becomes a complete enough man to bring the level of Yisrael, the supernal nation, which will bring God's light in the world. Yaakov finally does achieve that level here at this point. And he defeats his Yetzer Hara, sheks it. He does have more tests and struggles to go, but at this point he achieves his main level of bringing down the fact that all 12 sons, he will have 12 sons, and they will bring in God's name into the world, and the Yetzer Hara will ultimately be defeated by Yaakov, if not now, when Mashiach comes. And that's why he asks for the bracha, because that bracha that he gets confirms the fact that the brachas he took from Esav were in fact his, and that they did the right thing all along. And we see when he overcomes the spiritual test against his own dark side, the Yetzer Hara, when he actually meets Esav, he has absolutely no problem whatsoever confronting him. Matter of fact, Esav kisses him, seemingly, and Esav eventually just walks out of Eretz Yisrael without even being asked and just goes away, which shows us that once we defeat our inner Yetzer Hara, the exterior Yetzer Hara, the exterior enemies go away. And that most of man's struggle is a man struggle with himself. And when he overcomes his own problems, his own issues, he can conquer the exterior world outside of him. And Yaakov does that and becomes Yisrael here and fulfills that and gets the blessings and becomes the man he is supposed to be. So with that, I'd like to conclude with my study in Parshas Vayishlach, the blessing of the angel, and Yisrael's achieving of his ultimate duty to be the man that brings God's name into the world. May you have a blessed week. This is Rabbi Adam Law from Toronto Lights, or Yisrael. Shalom.